Hello, this is Father Rich. I'm here in the back of the Church of Our Lady of Peace for our next masterpiece called Cancer Ward. It's our 62nd masterpiece. It's a novel by Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn, who was a Russian author. It's from 1967. I apologize, it's been quite a little break here, but hopefully we can finish strong in these last about 13 masterpieces that we're working on. So I'm here in front of the statue of Saint Peregrine, because this was put in, I think, in about 10 years ago. He's the patron saint of those dealing with cancer. And so one, I wanted to bring some attention to that. It's, I think, obviously something a lot of our people deal with. And so finding that intercession, the strength of the intercession of Saint Peregrine. But the author, Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn, he uses that image of cancer, not just physically, which is part of his book. It's a semi-autobiographical novel that he wrote in 1967, but also the cancer of communism and under the extreme expression under Stalin. And so the book that he writes, it actually follows the life of several patients in a cancer ward, in a cancer hospital, in the midst of dealing with communism right after the death of Stalin and some of the upheaval that was taking place there. And so the author uses the different patients to almost represent different ideologies or different ways to deal with and try to find meaning in the reality of the cancer, which he would kind of call communism and the oppression that came with it, in addition to them dealing with the struggle of their own physical demise, dealing with cancer. The quote that he gives to his main character at one point in the novel kind of sums it up. A man dies from a tumor, so how can a country survive with growths like labor camps and exiles? The story of Aleksandr is that he was born right at the end of World War I. His father died early in an accident, so his mother raised him. She was a devout Russian Orthodox Christian, so that had influence on him. But then he kind of, in his teens and early adult life, kind of distanced himself from that Christianity, but would certainly influence him later on. He would eventually go off to World War II and fight in the Red Army, but in the midst of that, he would be taken, arrested by his own country because of some of the comments he was making that were negative towards Stalin. And so he was eventually convicted and imprisoned in a labor camp for 8 years. But it would be during that time in the labor camp that he really had a Christian spiritual kind of enlightenment, to the point where he would talk about, bless you, prison, bless you for being in my life, for there, lying upon the rotting prison straw, I came to realize that the object of life is not prosperity, as we are made to believe, but the maturity of the human soul. So again, we talk about like this St. Patrick experience, where his enslavement as a shepherd, he had this spiritual enlightenment and he found true meaning in his life. I think of a young man that I, in doing prison ministry in my early priesthood about 20 years ago, my age, who had grown up in Catholic schools in Philadelphia, the other side of the state, and he would, after being in prison for 12 years for dealing drugs and getting caught, he would say that prison was the best thing that ever happened to him, and that he was more free in prison than he had ever been outside of it. So it is really remarkable how that can happen if those who are imprisoned allow it to. So when his sentence ended, he eventually got out, but then he himself got cancer, and so through that he also had to turn to different things. And at some point he became convinced that his death was fast approaching. A Christian friend prayed for his recovery. The cancer went into remission. He kind of felt like that was a miracle, and so that kind of confirmed for him the need to get closer to God, which he had kind of been feeling called to when he was in prison as well. So through all of that, he comes out, he's a teacher, he writes, And even amidst the oppression of the Iron Curtain, he tries to write these different things that portray some of the evils or the negativity of this oppression and communism. So throughout this, eventually he had to go to the United States because of his citizenship was revoked because he was just pushing the envelope too much. He was very popular in the West because of his criticism of the Soviet Union and its policies. So eventually he went to the United States for, I think, about 20 years, but then was able to, after the fall of the Soviet Union, he was able to return to Russia kind of as somewhat of a hero. But he said that in 2008, when he was asked about dying, you see how he had come to terms with things. He talked about it would be a peaceful transition. As a Christian, I believe there is life after death, so I understand this is not the end of life. The soul has a continuation. The soul lives on. Death is only a stage. Some would even say a liberation. In any case, I have no fear of death. You know, if we could all have that confidence in our Christian faith and in our Savior Jesus Christ to not fear death, and we're starting November, today's All Saints Day, our annual meditation on coming to terms with death and knowing if we're in right relationship with God that we have nothing to fear in death. So certainly something that this masterpiece reinforces. So that's Cancer War. Again, our 60-second masterpiece by Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn from 1967. Our next one will be number 63, At Folsom Prison, a recording, a song by Johnny Cash. Thank you. Hope you'll join me. Have a great day. God bless.